This is CRM Audio, the Microsoft Business Applications Podcast with George Dubinsky, Joel Instrument, John Tabor. And this episode is the first part of our review of the April 2019 release notes for Microsoft Business Applications. This episode is brought to you by D365 User Group. D365 User Group is the world's most influential user group community of Microsoft Dynamics 365 and CRM users and partners. Across the globe, members share a common goal of maximizing and advancing the performance of Microsoft Dynamics 365 and CRM so that individuals and companies can improve operations, overcome obstacles, and exceed goals. We thank D365 UG CRM UG for sponsoring CRM Audio, the Microsoft Business Applications Podcast. Welcome to CRM Audio, gentlemen. It's New Year, and it's that time of year again, or that time of the half year again, where we have the release notes from the new version. Have you guys had a chance to digest the massive document that isn't quite as massive as last time?
Right. Not all 300 pages, but a good chunk of it.
I'm using the same methodology that I use for my family, and my family insists I've got selective hearing, so I have a selective reading here. Like, for example, stuff that I'm not interested in, or I'm saying not interested in, or basically what it translates to I know nothing about is 365 for finance and operation, for example. Right.
So you really pay close attention to the retail and Business Central parts, is what you're saying.
No, interesting that I had discussion yesterday with a couple of people about submissions of the sessions, topics for the conferences. And I'm really now confused what I should be submitting, because the talks do involve Dynamics 365 to an extent, but there's nothing specific about Dynamics 365 in those talks. They're really like Power Apps, and more specifically like CDS for apps. Platform stuff. But to demonstrate this platform stuff, I nearly always fire up Dynamics 365. So it's kind of, which category do I put it under? Dynamics 365 or Power Apps? And if I put it under Power Apps, which way it belongs, wouldn't be suffering from the same fate we all been suffering from, that when people see Power Apps, what they have in mind is Canvas.
Right.
And you're competing with the 100 hungry Power Apps people who've been suffering on 1.0 for a while, and now they're all getting confused by the model-driven apps. Right?
Well, I think since they're coming together, and since getting a little ahead of us, things like embedded Canvas apps are now generally available with the April release. I think that helps in some ways, because one of the topics you can kind of get ahead is on the using them together and coming up with real world scenarios. And this is what I'm finding, because I've been doing quite a bit of both Flow and Power Apps demos. The thing that really gets people excited, and I think the best demos, aren't where you talk about the technology, but where you show examples of real world scenarios made easier through the Power Platform. Then you can go a lot of different ways.
Yep.
Okay.
So
back to release.
All right. So
what I just found? News number one: configurable Mexican e-invoice. Is that like a Mexican standoff, or is it one of those things? When I was dealing with, I think it was in Indonesia. They have a special taxation category, a special accounting kind of approach to a specific contributions or payments. When you dig into it, it's basically legalized bribe, but they have a specific accounting approach that goes against the grain of the international practices, but it must be implemented if you are using accounting system in that particular country. I'm saying Indonesia, I'm not 100% sure, but maybe it was Thailand, one of Asian countries. But Mexico.
Is that like some countries where they have the time start half an hour later than everybody else?
Yeah.
Like parts of India, you just want to be different.
Oh no, they have. That's not a Mexican standoff. In Mexico, you must have invoice in a specific electronic format if you're doing electronic billing. Interesting.
Well, maybe that has something to do with it. And we could talk about the F&O reverse journal postings too. I have no idea what that means, but it sounds exciting. But general thoughts before we get into each category. We can go over each category, kind of in depth. But general thoughts is it feels a little bit like we don't have as many big wow features, but we have solid improvements to a lot of things that have been released. For one thing, some of the things that we had preview in the fall, we now have general availability, like some of the AI for sales, AI for customer service, which, maybe the name of that will change or something. But I think, there, it feels like I didn't feel out of breath after reading this like I did the last round, because there's solid improvements. And there are some key things that I've kind of highlighted in my copy of the release notes, but it's not like, whoa. I didn't say whoa very often when
I had a few woes, but it was mainly for field service.
Okay.
There was some really cool stuff in field service.
A case of kind of news fatigue, maybe? Because some of
it might be
were promised to us quite some time ago, and they're just about to make the release. They re-promised to us again, kind of.
That's go ahead, Sean.
I think you have to also balance that with some of where I lost some of the woe is last time I would look at it and be like, whoa, and then realize, oh, it's coming in like, the last time it was the October release, so it's coming in March. You know what I mean? And there are some of the things that this is the April release, but the functionality is really not even coming until September because it's a wave, right? So that now that I understood that a little bit better, that tempered some of it, but there was still some really neat capabilities coming really soon. So there was a little bit of excitement.
Yeah, I agree. And some of the things actually, there were at least two things that jumped out at me that when I was publishing some of our best of episodes at the end of the year and re-listening to the episode where we interviewed Charles Lamanna, some of the things he mentioned that they were going to do are now actually there. So,
right.
So again, we had heard some of it, but yeah. So it's something that I feel though, like some of the things like from the last round that I haven't fully even scratched the surface on yet, like sales playbooks. Mm-hmm. There's solid improvements to that, and but I don't feel like I'm so far behind anymore in that area.
Right.
So let's go through a couple of these things. The first thing in the document, which is interesting, is marketing, which a little bit surprising because it's not alphabetical and it's not the most used part. So it's interesting to put marketing first. Maybe that means there's some of the most significant improvements there. But just some of the highlights there. Integration with content management systems struck my eye. Something that they don't really have right now. Spam score, so scoring your emails and campaigns on how likely they are to trigger spam. And segmentation enhancements.
Just a comment. This is the marketing add-on, the additive product, not the marketing that's part of customer engagement.
Yes, this is not enhancements to the marketing feature that hasn't been touched for 5 years.
Right.
Yeah, this is D365 for marketing.
Right.
We have embedding a marketing form embedded on external web pages. Some solid stuff.
Mm-hmm. This was one I didn't get really excited about.
Okay. So
just
Sean
because
says,
it's just because it's not out of my specialization. So
right,
it's cool stuff, but I don't play with it that much. So
we have social. That's a pretty big thing, and that was a gap. You could build a custom connector for your customer journey to tweet or whatever. But people that want to incorporate social marketing, we had to look at other platforms.
Mhm.
Now we're adding that capability, which there was some question, where's social engagement fit in? And you'll notice social engagement is not in the document. So
Right.
I think that question has been answered.
Yes. Agreed.
All right. So moving on to the sales content, there were a couple things that made me say, whoa, here. One is the 3 letters CPQ. Did you notice that?
I did not.
Okay, so
Detail.
CPQ, for those of you that don't know, is configure, price, quote. Think things like Explogix.
Mhm.
Think things like the Aptus and a number of other tools out there. So especially if you sell to people that sell configurable products, say Microsoft selling different configurations of Surface, or think of manufacturing customers who manufacture. You buy a car from your favorite car manufacturer, and you choose certain types of seats and whatever, and configuring that. That's a big deal for people who, there are companies who have elected not to go with Dynamics because it's an area where we're behind Salesforce. And there are some strong partners like Explogix, but Salesforce generally, well, their maybe core functionality hasn't had CPQ. They've just had a deeper integration with CPQ providers. You go to Salesforce's App Exchange, and there are a lot of really good CPQ things. And people that do a lot with quoting, this is a big deal. And so what they've announced isn't that Microsoft is going to build their own CPQ engine, but they're positioning a seamless CPQ integrated experience where a user inside Dynamics can choose to, I want to test Explogix, and it will seamlessly install the solution. And I don't have a lot of detail on this, but it sounds like there's some standard. It sounded to me kind of like the bring your own channel approach with customer service, where it's kind of some standards that CPQ providers might go with so that they can seamlessly try different CPQ vendors more seamlessly than going and requesting a trial and going through all that.
But now, does this mean that you no longer have to almost abandon the opportunity product for CPQ? Because historically, you had to do a lot of changes to how opportunities work when you're dealing with CPQ.
Right. Well, one of the things that I think is going to enable this is D365 for F&O and Brand Central, which and Business Central are going to have seamless integration for product catalog with the Common Data Service. So if you think about that, that solves a lot of the current challenge with doing CPQ type in it, because a lot of times, like I've got customers that have AX or NAV, and the real product catalog, the master or the product catalog, is in finance and operations. And there's a question: because Explogix right now gives you the ability to run their solution from ERP or from CRM.
But the one thing that does not address is if you're not an F&O customer currently, and you want the inventory, you want the product capabilities that F&O has, the inventory part, you still, even though it's CDS, it's not a separated app, because you still need the GL side, and you still need all that financial, I can't think of the words. It's just really it's the GNL transactions because of how inventory is created in F&O. So what I'd really love to see, and hopefully this is a precursor to that, is now that it's CDS, able, maybe we'll get to start to see apps in F&O where you can get parts. And maybe you don't have to.
That's not how I read it. I just sorry, folks, for the second.
No, it's fine.
When you were talking sales, and I'm kind of.
Your selective listening kicked in.
Yeah,
there it is.
It kicked in automatically. Couple things. First of all, why do they use this language? Delight your customers. Did you ever have a customer who said, Joel or Sean, I was so delighted to see the latest release?
No.
Right. No, but here's where it comes in, because you can. I don't know if your customers will be delighted with the seamlessly integrated CPQ process, but you will definitely irritate your customers and make them go someplace else if the order process or the quote process is too complicated.
Now,
right.
So what I'm reading between the lines, it's not like Dynamics 365 for Sales has suddenly built-in CPQ.
Right.
That's not what it says.
That's not what it says.
It will seamlessly, blah, 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 delightfully integrate with the CPQ providers.
Right.
I think it started, to an extent, like embryo of this approach, we've seen when Microsoft created a few releases ago, a new message, something like, I don't remember the message, basically, give me the price. Calculate price or something like this, which would allow you to officially override the pricing per item and things like that on a plugin level as a developer. So you didn't have to kind of shop around and, override 17 different messages. You just go and override one message, which would guarantee that the pricing continues to work as advertised. So this is, to me, it's kind of a bit lower level integration as far as CPQ process is concerned. It's kind of they're opening up as a platform and saying these are the hooks for CPQ providers to hook into. I bet they were working, they have been working with the XP-Logic-like suppliers to guarantee that they have hooks. And if I decide to delight my customers with my own homegrown CPQ solution, I should be able to go ahead and use those hooks and implement solution that will be able to tap into Dynamics 365 for Sales and be a CPQ provider for solution if my customer chooses that. So if CPQ provider
I agree with you. It
talks to F&O, that's up to CPQ provider.
Right. But I agree with you. It's not anything quote unquote CRM for Sales changes. CRM for Sales benefits. I think one of the things is integrating with the CDS and making the sync between F&O, D365 CE, and Business Central, making that seamless. That simplifies things for XP-Logics, because again, typically right now, if you deploy XP-Logic, you got to choose: do I want this to be CRM centric or ERP centric? Where now it's CDS centric.
Yes.
All right, so enough about CPQ. The other thing in sales that jumped out, then I said finally, is forecasting. Because a lot of salespeople and sales managers do forecasting, and if not counting, just looking at estimated revenue on opportunities, we don't really have true sales forecasting. This is something that the old school CRM systems like Siebel did much better or we're just really good at. And also Salesforce, is one area that I think Salesforce is a little bit at. And we built forecasting capabilities even back on CRM version 4. Compared to what's coming, this is much more streamlined. And it doesn't cover every scenario. Like I'm thinking of a customer I had that makes flatware for companies and has kind of the recurring monthly sale where their opportunities are more of a forecast of a year's worth of revenue. But it might have something to do with that too, because some things don't fit neatly into the opportunity model. The opportunity model is built for like a single sale. Like we have this opportunity, you're going to buy. But if you have something that's more of a commit to a certain amount over, say, a 12-month period, that kind of falls apart unless you jump through a bunch of hoops. So I can't tell by the blurb in this exactly what it's going to do, but it looks like it has a commit level and some of the other basic things that go into a typical sales forecast.
I would assume
and that's something
that would cover very basics, because what else then AI for sales is going to do?
Right.
So
yeah.
So it's kind of gives enough out of the box and gives you the taste. The next thing you know, there will be upgrade button. Would you like to see that figure? That figure is in AI for sales. Buy now.
Right.
So
and that's why it says simple.
So I guess the word is, though, if you're an ISV that makes one of the sales forecasting add-ons, you might want to improve your product.
Exactly.
All right. So any other things? There's some solid improvements to things like the playbooks and other things like that, but nothing else really jumped out. Sean, did you catch anything in the customer service area? I had a couple things, but I want to know what you thought about the customer service.
The one that jumped out to me immediately, and this was a wow factor for me, was the case resolution extensibility. I don't know how long I've had customers every single time I implement say, "Well, can we change how that resolution box looks?" And we always say, "Well, no, we'd have to create a custom one." So
no, that reached perfection in 2010.
Yes, it did. So
you're not going to change that. It's perfect.
So now that it's extensible, and the part that I loved is, as part of this feature, administrators can add, remove, or edit any of the fields on the case resolution dialog and customize it as per their requirements. So if you now have a customer that does not do billable work, you can take that billable field off and not have to worry about it. You can have pre-canned options set for resolutions, right? All those things that they've asked for all those years, that is fantastic. I'm very excited about that.
Okay, so I'm happy about that too. But to me, besides the way it looks and being locked into that, the other I guess challenge that you have with resolution, in my opinion, just like opportunity close, is the fact that, I guess, as they design it to handle multiple opens and close, the fact that it records it on a separate related activity is challenging, because if you want to get a view, since it's technically a child record, if you want to get a view of cases by resolution, you have to build it from the case resolution side and add the case fields to it. You can't get a case view that has the resolution field in it. You know, any change there, is it still going to be that separate activity?
Well, it looks like it's the same activity, but there's things you could start looking at with the if it's tied to an SLA, you could look at the SLA KPIs to maybe get some of that information. But I didn't see anything that said it was going to be any different in terms of how it's deployed. Just that the fact that you can modify that resolution.
Okay.
So.
Anything else? One thing that jumped out is SLAs are now going to be based on flow rather than workflow.
That's good and bad. I mean, it's all good, but if you've just done an implementation where you've implemented a lot of workflow for your SLAs and now you're going to redo them, that's a challenge. But
that doesn't mean your workflow isn't going to. That doesn't mean your workflow is not going to work anymore. Right. It just means that out of the box SLA processes for timers and things like that are going to be.
What you're whining about. You have an opportunity to build a customer again for the same work, and
yeah, they love that.
No, look,
but
what
tell them to be better, faster, stronger.
We talk about incremental features versus kind of groundbreaking features. What jumped at me as a big deal for the deployments. You can use. You'll be able to use Google Chrome browser to host apps in Unified Service Desk. It's always
that was a whoa.
If you would have waited 2 seconds and let Joe stop talking, I was going to say that. But no, you're right. George, it is huge. That is huge.
Do you think that that's a side effect of the move of Edge to Chromium?
I think that would be coincidental, but it's kind of a waving, if not white, cream-colored flag in the browser war and saying, yeah, okay, please dominate us. But yeah, it's kind of, it's it's exception of reality that most customers, or I wouldn't say most, a lot of customers accepted IE, but now you're asking them to do the same with Edge and move to Edge, and not. I find that Edge acceptance is kind of low, and people switch from a lot. So,
and that USD 4.0 implementation of Edge was buggy at best. It was not
right.
Yeah, look, it had its own problems. The memory management in IE and Edge is different from Chrome memory management. In any case, it's going to rapidly expand, because I've seen the situations when customer was really, really hesitant to go with USD just because the corporate standard was Chrome browser. And
right.
I said,
and it seems to me like the dependence on IE traditionally has been one of the Achilles heels of USD, because
it was.
USD can be pokey if you have a lot of integrations and a lot of screens opening, if you don't have a lot of resources on your computer, or if you're using the 32-bit. Then add in a browser that is basically 4 years old now. It hasn't been really touched since then. It's just not a great fit. So I agree. That wasn't a whoa. That was a little whoa. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything else on the I guess stuff that is in preview or will be shortly, like Omni-channel Engagement Hub is going to be general availability at some point, before the next release. I'm excited about that because, and the preview hasn't started yet, but what I saw at Extreme, Omni-channel Engagement Hub is basically USD in the cloud. Now, it doesn't do everything that USD does, and probably will never do the things that USD can do from local application integration, but from multi-sessioning and agent scripts and the most common use cases for USD, it does a good job. And I'm looking forward, and I have several customers who are anxious to try it out because they would love to be able to not have to have something physically installed on every workstation.
Right. And it also is if it can work well, it's really great for integration with telephony that can integrate via URL, right? So if you have a system like a Genesis or another call center system, application that you can integrate via URL, not having to have that client and transfer that information through a client is so much better and easier for them deployment wise.
Right. Okay. So before we get to the field service part, I think we need to have a deep conversation about project service, because there's literally like a page of vaguely worded stuff about PSA. Right. And I've got to wonder if the kind of instant bidirectional sync with F&O and CDS, that's likely to pay dividends for project service, because that's one of those things like field service where you've got a lot of overlap for like project accounting. And if the core entities are synced automatically, that takes a lot of the confusion about what should we do. Should we do our time in PSA or should we do it in F&O?
Right. Makes it a lot easier.
Depending on what exactly is included in that instant bidirectional sync, I guess.
Yep.
All right, so George, you can go back to sleep, and Sean's going to talk about field service improvements.
Well, some of the really cool things that I really liked in the field service improvements were the embedded IoT, especially with device provisioning, and also that the time frame for these enhancements for the embedded IoT visualizations, device commands, and device provisioning will all be within a couple months of the release. So by July, there'll be general availability, which is great. Device provisioning is a big deal, and so is the IoT visualizations. Being able to have those embedded visualizations within the field service app, coming from data on items you're working on, it's huge to be able to see that very easily. And
what kind of visualizations is it?
IoT. So if you have like a temperature readings from a device, and you have a work order that has that asset associated to it, you could see the embedded IoT data right there in the form.
Okay.
So instead of a kludge way of doing it, yeah.
You can right now. You got to monitor it from the full application.
Right. So you can get current and recent history. You can get related repair history, all that kind of good stuff. So, and then being able to do some device commands and provisioning. That's a big deal. So it's really bringing field service and IoT Central, tied together in a much more seamless manner, which is great. Really big fan of that.
Okay.
Another thing that I really liked, the scheduling capabilities. The biggest one for me, this was the biggest wow factor, was the self-service scheduling via portal. So your customers can, much like you do when you schedule an oil change or something like that, you go to the website, you schedule your appointment, you'll be able to do the same kind of thing with field service, which is really cool. The example that they give in the release notes is talking about you have a quarterly preventive maintenance visit that needs to be booked. You can through your portal, they can search and book for an available time slot within a day. Customers are presented with time slots that have available resources with the proper skills. So it's looking at, this is underpinnings of universal resource scheduling, presented through the portal, which is fantastic. Especially, if you have key customers that want to be able to really schedule something in an emergency fast, being able to see what the asset is, what skills are needed for the service, what resources have those skills, and being able to schedule that via a portal is amazing, really amazing. I'm super excited about that.
So what about the variable resource locations?
Teleportation, man.
I didn't really understand what is meant by variable resource. Like,
so what this means?
Places?
Well, what this means is on a resource record, you have.
Where's my super suit? That's a variable resource location.
It's like that song "If" from the '70s, where he said, "If a man could be in two places at the same time, I would be with you yesterday and today," which makes no sense because it's the same place.
Oh my God!
No, I think it refers to the stuff that you know you have, but you forgot.
So obviously, we know nothing about resource locations.
Exactly.
So please educate us, Sean.
So right now in the system, you have to define a location for a resource, and you have to have a specific location. Quite often, you could have a resource that is based out of, let's say you're based out of Columbus, Ohio, but you can be, you travel, so you could be at any given place. If you want to be able to leverage that resource in an RSO or route scheduling optimization scenario, where's the nearest resource, you can add multiple addresses to this resource so that you can take advantage of that optimization. So if they're traveling periodically and you need to have a different address than the standard base location, you can do that now, which is cool.
So my question for you, Mr. Field Service, is that what have you done traditionally if you had that type of requirement? How did you in the past work around this if that scenario came up?
Well, we actually did have that requirement on a recent project, and we weren't really able to be as flexible. We had to create a separate kind of set of attributes that weren't necessarily picked up by route scheduling optimization. It was just more for definition. So this is really going to take care of...
If that customer's listening to the podcast, get ready for your change order.
So this is going to really help in that scenario.
You use plural. Okay. Customers listening to.
That's right.
So good news, technicians, you can be in multiple places at the same time now.
That's right, and that happens a lot more than you think.
As you want.
Yeah, it happens a lot more than you think. So and then another, you can have. This is cool too. The ability to have multiple resources on a single work order. We've done workarounds to be able to enable that, but so you can have but now you could have an incident type that specifies multiple resources, which is even better because when you have a scenario where you have, let's say you're integrated with a contract management system that is creating your agreements, and then on those agreements you have 4 PMs a year, and it takes multiple resources to manage that PM. Now it's all part and parcel of the incident type and can flow all the way through to the system created work order. So that's a fantastic bit of functionality.
So do you have anything to say about mixed reality?
Yes.
Hologram stability?
Yes, I do. The remote assist stuff is super cool that they're talking about. The ability to complete a work order or to track the actions that you're doing on the work order via remote assist is fantastic. It gives you so much more.
Dryer, and then you buy
right.
a $2,000 kit so that the repairman can walk you through the fixing the pipe or hose or whatever you need.
Technically, it's $5,000. Technically, it's $5,000. But yes, exactly. But George, imagine you pinch on the screen or in the air and you complete your work order for that dryer and move on to your next call.
Well, it is. I thought it was cool that you can now have multiple technicians working on the same thing.
Well, and there's another benefit for remote assist that in a training scenario, you can have someone watching what's happening to do like on the job training.
Great. So I'm looking forward to underqualified technicians being sent to me every single time.
There you go. See, George, you're always looking at the silver lining.
No,
instead of being sent to you, they'll come to you virtually through their HoloLens.
With virtual reality, one of the things and remote assist is part of that as well. When you have situations when complexity is overwhelming, for example, remember there were some promos, but scenario did make sense. Something like repair to an aircraft engine.
Mm-hmm.
The manuals must be. You should be able to feel like a state library with the manuals for those things, right? Having those manuals available to you on the screen for the specific part you're working on, and bring it up kind of as you work on a part, and have someone who's an expert in this particular area to be able to join in and point you a few things you're unsure about, that would be great. Like, even simpler scenarios, I understand it's a $5,000 kit, but it will, like Murphy Law, works. So that's just a start. But I had the experience a couple of days ago. I'm installing a new front door. So the manufacturer said, well, you measure stuff. So I did some measurements like brick to brick and things like that, the opening and stuff like this. So they sent me drawings. But then I call installers, right, who come in and do the check measure and fix. I was off by 40 mils, which is not much. I'm proud of myself that I can use a ruler with the 2% accuracy. But the point is that stuff like this, I wouldn't have to coordinate with the installers, right? They should be able to join me remotely and walk me through how do I need to measure exactly and do necessary corrections, double check what's going on, do the measurement. Perhaps device can do measurements for them. I can measure stuff with my iPhone. Surely I can do this with HoloLens. So, and then there would be less coordination and less trips for the guys, and I don't have to schedule appointment with them, and the whole thing would have been done like in 15 minutes instead of scheduling the appointment and interrupting their workday, my workday, and so on and so forth. I know it's a simple example for $5,000 kit, but you see where it's going. So it could be a tremendous thing. So
there's a lot of potential for it, especially with the ability to close out the work order and to document what's happening while it's being done, because that's a step that wasn't in the remote assist before. So as you're doing the remote assist and you're replacing a hose or you're checking voltage, you're doing these things, and these are part and parcel of the task list, the service tasks that are incorporated within that incident type. These things are being checked off, and you're getting better documentation. You're getting if you're looking at the duration for these tasks, you're getting better documentation of that, so that your overhead
you can tell whose fault was it.
Right.
That things were not fixed properly. Because currently it's kind of, I don't know, ask Sean. And Sean's like, no, it wasn't me, it was Joe.
Yeah.
That's all cool, Sean, but I'm not approving your expensing of a HoloLens yet.
Wow, damn it.
And so so that is cool. And again, I look forward to seeing real customers using this stuff. I mean, I thought the initial release was more of a proof of concept, or a, wow, look what we can do, got good press. They add nice things to it. As these things become more affordable or work with a wider variety of goggles or virtual or mixed reality devices, that's great. Mm-hmm. But we need to move on because
yes, we do.
Okay, so portals. There's three big things. CDS portals, which is to me the biggest thing, because right now, let's just say you want to do a portal for a help desk, your internal help desk. You got 200 people, and none of them, except for maybe 50, really will use Dynamics. With the current portal licensing, if they work for your company, you have to buy them a CRM license.
Yep.
And so this is going to make portals an extension of Power Apps and Common Data Service, which is a good thing. It should make portals, and then add to that the ability to embed Power BI and the ability to show external system data, which was a major limitation because a lot of portals want to show SAP data or something. And so having that. And then, George, I'm sure the biggest feature to you is you can now turn a website under maintenance message on when routine maintenance is being performed.
Which is would be a permanent state for me, yeah.
Yeah, so if you're the portal developer, just turn that on all the time, and then people will just be forgiving if it doesn't work.
As far as portals, there are no surprises. CDS, it's more of a continuing CDS for portals or portals for CDS. It's more of a continuation of the general trend of untangling Dynamics 365 from the platform, right? So, and that's kind of in line with the separation of the platform. So less dependencies on portal solutions and things like that. External data, displaying external data with some implicit grants. That's kind of continuation on the ideas that people already have been doing, like Adoxio been pioneering, bringing external data with some, I think, single sign-on in the simple terms. So from other systems where you know what you're doing and how to do that. So those systems you can authenticate your API and so on, but user wouldn't know any better. And it's all authenticated and nice. So there are no kind of fundamental changes, like, for example, you can now deploy portal on the server of your choice. No, that's not coming in. There are some interesting movements, like how event management portal, even available now, does things, but it does them differently. But as far as Dynamics 365 portals is concerned, it's all kind of expected. We were expecting it, let's put it this way. There are no surprises. So it's a good job, it's a solid, it's moving in the right direction, but fundamentally it's kind of thumbs up, but there is no, whoa, awesome, Anyway.
Okay, so does anybody have anything to say about Power BI, retail, talent, or F&O?
I don't have anything.
The only thing I'll say about F&O is the ability to have the objects in CDS, the entities for CDS for apps. That's a big deal because it's much more seamless integration.
Yeah,
especially
seamless integration, and I'm frankly not qualified to talk about anything else. The one thing at Talent that jumped out at me that I thought, well, that's actually a useful feature is the onboarding guides, where you can use it to manage your onboarding guides to new employees. You can assign certain ones to certain people and have an app where when they start, they've got all their onboarding guides there. And that's something I was talking to somebody in my organization, and he thought that was something that, Dynamics partners might actually want to leverage. So you think about a unique way for delivering your how-to guides for somebody new for not only Dynamics but other systems and other things. That's actually a pretty useful thing.
That is cool.
So here's what I think. Since we've been talking for I don't know, almost an hour here.
Whoa! We're just coming to the most interesting part.
I know, but the platform.
Yes.
Yeah, we the common data service, Flow, Power Apps. There's a number of things there, and since people don't like to listen to hour-and-a-half podcasts, I think we need to come back and do a part 2, maybe later this week or next week.
Okay, can I have the pleasure of closing on the very important...
we always give you the last word, George.
Okay,
if we don't, you take it. So
here we go. Before we jump into the platform, which I would like to kind of jump separately, because there are some goodness in there, a lot of it, again, expected. Some of the things that we've been waiting for so long that it's no longer a surprise. We kind of roll our eyes and say, finally. But there is lots of goodness in there. Yes, let's talk about it separately. Now, what I picked up in finance and operation is additional Russian localization features. Being a native speaker...
I saw that. I didn't know what that meant.
Being a native speaker, I was curious and saying, accounting is slightly different in Russia. I know a thing or two about how people do accounting in Russia. And found this. Journal of Alcohol Sales. This functionality includes printing the journal of alcohol retail sales in statutory format. Boom! And on that note...
So what, they have to report how much vodka everybody's buying?
Pretty much. And on that note...
Does that require very high number processing?
I have no idea what they're talking about, but obviously...
Well, there's a Chinese data center, too, so that's something.
Anyway, so... Damn.
Don't take his last word, Joel.
All right. Well,
there are other things like other
more
unrealized expenses. I was not expected to be robbed on my way into the bank.
Yeah. So there's companies asking for that. I would love to hear the backstory behind some of that stuff.
Oh, goodness
All right.
sake.
So we will be back with part 2 of this within the next week, and we will get to some of the really exciting things about Canvas apps and embedded apps and flow enhancements and a bunch of other stuff.
Well, in the meantime, gentlemen, get your forms 5, 6, 7, 11, and 12 in electronic formats, because those are alcohol sales declarations forms.
This has been CRM Audio, the Dynamics 365 podcast. Send us your feedback at voice@crm.audio. Check out our other shows at crm.audio or subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, and any place else podcasts are offered. This podcast is a production of Dynamics Podcast LLC.